Many web browsers are getting worse. And because there's a trend of people looking around at alternatives, many more web browsers are being created. But there is one that is set to launch probably in the next month that I'm going to warn you in advance, do not use it. This is a dangerous web browser, and we're going to talk about it today. Welcome back to Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below. And today we are going to be talking about a brand new browser that is upcoming called Comet. Comet is a browser based out of Perplexity. It is designed for agentic search, at least according to all of the information we have about it. Its objective, of course, with agentic searches is to automate tasks that you might ask the browser to do for you on the internet. So you might say, hey, I need some new toothpaste, or hey, here's a whole shopping list. Go and set things up. We've talked a little bit about this on the Weekly News Roundup, but as far as this type of task, what it does is it will take the information it knows about you, your information about the AI model itself, and it will scour the internet looking for things that you might want to buy, organizing your cart together, and actually placing the orders. Now, there has been some success with this and not quite some success with it. But what we are actually seeing is a lot more companies experimenting with this type. This is the next phase of AI. The first phase of AI that we have already lived through is the large language models, which is basically compositized searches and then mosaically plagiarized together to piece together a whole bunch of information from the internet, basically so you don't actually have to do any discernment to think for yourself. You're just trusting what the AI model says. Of course, it can be biased and feed information. Agentic is the next model of AI that is making its rounds, and agentic AI effectively means that it is acting as an agent on your behalf. That is how it gets that name. Now, the agentic model of this is not actually what I have a problem with, although I'm not sure I'd want to use an AI-powered browser for that either. But to understand why we need to avoid this, we need to know a little bit more about Perplexity itself. So Perplexity is probably one of the fastest growing, best known AI models there is. This is one of the, now to be clear, I don't know if they actually are their own AI or if they're just utilizing AI. So is it a variety of different tools put together? The reality of this company is there's not a whole ton of information about them. There's a blog post, there's careers, stores, things like that on their page itself. But it is like many of the other AI tools out there. You know, you could go right to ChatGPT, or you could use a platform like WriteBlogger, and is an example where it's designed with a series of different tools designed to have an API integrating into the AI models like DeepSeek or ChatGPT or Lambda or whatever else in order to give data that you want. Now, Perplexity, though, is one of the fastest growing companies in the AI world. You can go over to their site and you can do what they call basic searches for free. So this is, you come in here and you can just basically do anything. There you go. Power outage crippled Spain. Okay, I guess that just happened. So there's a number of different automated things. You can search anything you want in there. You know, maybe just do a basic search for Linux and it'll give you a lot of information. You know, what is it? Here's your key factors about it. Here's common uses. So you can see it's giving you a lot of stuff down here. They've given you some of what they would consider some more legitimate links at the top. So overall, this is not a horrible thing. And this really is the way that a lot of people are kind of starting to get back and doing searches with. Now, it's also possible it could save some of those things. Now, there's like a pro model, and over here you would need to sign in with it either with a Google or Apple account or create your own. But you can do that for free, and that's like your pro searches, which you can do, I think, 3 of those free if you're signed in, or you can pay a $20 a month subscription to do 300, it says 300 plus pro searches per day. And then you can choose a smarter AI. You can pick from DeepSeek R1, OpenAI O3 Mini, Claude 3.7. Now, one of the things that they do is they run these on their local servers. So if you are using DeepSeek, for example, everything through DeepSeek is a model run on their own server, so there's no data going back to China if you're concerned about that. So this is a compelling AI model to use. It uses many of those. Now, what they do then, the other thing about these guys, this might drive some of you guys crazy, they have actually partnered with Motorola. Upcoming, like any new Motorola phones coming out is automatically going to have this app pre-installed, like, Facebook and TikTok and whatever else you want on there. And not only that, but they are merging some of the functionality of the device into Perplexity's AI model itself. So you will probably not be able to get away with this if you have a Motorola without doing something custom like Lineage, which I assume is going to strip it out. They are also in talks with Samsung. They didn't actually have a blog post about that yet, but the Motorola deal is done. That is happening. Now, they do actually give a tip of the hat to a little bit of privacy and security. This whole article here, did they not even have the titles of their articles? The title of this article is How Perplexity Enterprise Keeps Your, I think it's your data secure and private. Like, horrible web design here. They actually have not given us the title of the article on this page, but this is from their blog post, and it does have the, it is basically giving the tip of the hat to privacy. Mostly it talks about security. They're using SOC Type 2 compliant, which basically means they're doing a lot of high-end security stuff. They're doing the best you can do to keep hackers from getting in there and stealing your data. That is what this means. So as far as a hackable service, yes, it's still hackable, but it's going to be a lot harder as they are paying a lot more attention to security. Now, of course, they do mention the word privacy does appear in the title of this particular article. So we have to keep that in mind. But with that, as you read through this, it is all about the privacy, like the security mostly. Really, the only thing about privacy here is we maintain formal agreements with all third-party model providers to ensure they can't access or use your data for training purposes. We review the agreements annually to stay compliant with evolving standards and requirements. And the best part, Enterprise Pro, unlike every other model provider, does not use your data to improve its own training systems. So if you're paying for it in the Enterprise Pro, it's not utilizing your data to train their models. Otherwise, anything you give it, like any other AI, is utilizing your data to train back their models. So that's why if you want to run AI, you should run it on a locally hosted instance instead, where you have more control over it. So the only tip of the hat they give to privacy doesn't mention anything about being private. It doesn't mention anything about sharing data. All it mentions is, hey, the data is not going to leak out in a hack. Well, that's good news, at least. But the problem is that the company itself is, they are focused a whole lot more on the privacy sector, like a whole lot more on the advertising sector, in which they are really looking at how they can use ads utilizing some deeper models. Now, if you go out and start looking around a lot of the information, it's really hard to find. Most everything is just Perplexity, agentic AI, things like that. But the TBPN podcast, I will provide a link for this episode down below. Check out their channel if you like this type of content. This is like a 3-hour video, but the first part of the video, they were interviewing the CEO of Perplexity. And now the actual articles that I originally saw started after this scene here, but I went back through and watched what he was saying in advance. And I think that this part here, starting in, it should be 4123, is actually quite relevant. The guy over here on the right asks the question about advertising, and this is quite telling.
How are you thinking about advertising in the context of search? It's historically been an ad-driven business, but we're seeing a lot of AI product companies just charge $20 a month, $200 a month, $2,000 a month, who knows? Is there a future where if you search for what's the best corporate card, Ramp is gonna show up at the top if they bid on that?
Hopefully not. I think that's the main reason why people like using the AIs. They think it's giving them something that Google doesn't offer. So I think the subscription revenue is very healthy and positive. Like OpenAI is making 10 billion a year or something like that, right? Or so I think the subscription TAM is way bigger than what it is today. I believe like you can do a lot of interesting things with memory where once you understand the user deeply enough, the user can probably trust you if you show them relevant sponsored content, as long as it's super personalized and hyper optimized for that user. Instagram has shown some stats where the engagement time on their platform reduces if they remove the ads, because that's the level of personalization of the ads. So if any of the AI companies can do that, I think that could be like a thing where brands could pay a lot more money to advertise there.
So a little bit of a lengthy clip there, but he's first asked, what about the advertising? And he's basically like, we hope we don't have this. And then he says the subscription model is very valuable, which subscription does generally result in more revenue than does advertising. That is certainly true. But then he concludes the whole block by basically saying that, hey, if we can figure out how to get the relevant content to you based on your personality, then a sponsor would pay more for that. So in other words, we don't want to do it, but we do want to do it. That's really what he says. And that is really where the concern of this happens to be, where this CEO, he's kind of talking on both sides of his mouth, where he's on the one hand, he's saying, we don't want to do this, but then he's citing Instagram says they have more engagement with ads. And then he says, but if we know who you are and we target you with specific sponsored content that's super relevant to you, then that can be useful. So in other words, is this really an ad model, or is it a passive ad model? Is it a behind the scenes ad model? There's too many questions about this as far as where they are. So they are interested in deep and personal profiles to serve highly targeted ads. Now, he does say we don't want you to find a result because it's the highest bidder. That's what he says is the difference with Google, which really is only the case with Google if you turn off the targeted marketing. But he does say we want to sell you an ad that is based on a deep level of knowledge about who you are. Keep that in the back of your mind, and we're going to talk a little bit about the web browser now, and then I promise we're going to loop back to this point on ads. Now, the browser itself is designed as an agentic browser. There is very little information out there directly from the horse's mouth. They have hit it pretty close to their chest. It is assumed to be based on a Chromium framework. So basically Chromium browser and adding their own things to it, just like Chrome and Edge and Vivaldi and numerous other browsers. Now, the browser itself is designed first and foremost to be agentic. We've talked about that. Basically, you assign automation and tasks to the browser, and it will solve those browser problems for you. All right. Now, the paper here, this is the best write-up I found of this anywhere. There's very little about it. There's some basic Twitter posts with just an animated logo. They've talked a little bit about it. The CEO talks a little bit of browser in the next clip from the interview there. But over here, they have this fairly lengthy article kind of talking about the browser, but effectively everything in here is all about the agentic, the AI features. There's cross-platform compatibility with Chromium. So that leads me to believe they'll probably have this released for every system. Maybe they'll start with just Windows or Mac, but of course, once you have Mac, Linux is just easy to do. So we don't know a lot about what they're doing. But then they're trying to get this out to understand agentic search behaviors. And then they get into just a little bit about the waitlist stuff. There's legal concerns about who owns the data, public media. This whole thing is just about what Perplexity is planning to do with the browser from the perspective of agentic AI. Now, if you look for advertising, you'll see that there's really nothing except on the bottom of the page, you can advertise with the publication itself. There's nothing in this article mentions advertising in the slightest. However, in the interview from this point at 43:19, again, this video is linked down in the description. I'd encourage you to read it and take a look at these guys' channel here. And in the interview, he mentions that this is all about building a better user profile. He doesn't mention anything about the agentic AI. Listen to this.
Yet to be explored, but in order to crack that, you need to crack the memory properly. That's kind of one of the other reasons we wanted to build a browser, is like we want to get data even outside the app to better understand you. Because some of the prompts that people do in these AIs is purely work related. It's not like that personal.
Yep.
On the other hand, like what are the things you're buying? Which hotels are you going? Where are you? Which restaurants are you going to? What are you spending time browsing? Tells us so much more about you that we plan to use all the context to build a better user profile. And maybe, through our Discover feed, we could show some ads there.
He says in here, the entire thing of Comet is to gain a better user profile. He says the things you do on Perplexity are mostly work related. He wants you to use the Comet browser tied with Perplexity and your user account with Perplexity, of course, in order to gain a better understanding of who you are as a person. Because with that, then he gets in and says, hey, through our Discover tab, now we could add more ads that are highly targeted specifically for you. So this entire browser isn't about the AI models. It is all about user data collection. Their plan is to collect data and use it for targeted ads. Now, the TechCrunch article has a few of these things quoted and gets a little bit deeper about some of what they're planning to do. So you can see here they've mentioned the TBN podcast that we've just been having a look at. So this is what they say. That's kind of one of the other reasons we want to build a browser is we want to get data even outside the app to better understand you, because some of the prompts that people do in the AIs are purely work related. It's not like that's personal. All right. So on the other hand, what are the things you're buying? Which hotels you're going to? Which restaurants are you going to? What are you spending time browsing? Tells us a lot more about you. We plan to use all of this context to build a better user profile and, through our Discover feed, show you some ads in there. So this is all about advertising and the making and the marketing of ads. So what could they do with the data that they are collecting? The first is they said they are looking to build better, more robust user profiles specifically to target you with ads. The CEO in the same interview said that, hey, Instagram's user engagement goes up with highly specifically targeted ads. And so if we trust the AI system and it knows a whole lot more about us, it can put in ads that are not just who paid the highest money, but an ad who is advertising a product that we would like best. That's literally what he just said in the interview, even though he said we want to kind of rely on that subscription model on the other side of his mouth. What he did say is we are interested in using this to build a better user profile. Now, what could they? This is speculation on my part. This is them. This is what I'm thinking they could do, because now if they have this deep user profile, they need to figure out how to monetize it. What company doesn't want to monetize their assets? Are they making enough just with selling some ads in their Discover system? Well, they could build an advertising platform to compete with Google and Facebook and some of the other smaller advertising platforms. They could do that. They could lease the data. You see, this is what like Facebook and Google do. They don't sell data, but they provide access to it. You can create a little account in there and provide access, and then they'll allow you to target people based on the profiles that they set up. That's something that they can do. They could send out that data to a separate broker. There's a number of things that they could do with such data if they wanted to. Now, that's all speculation, of course. What we do know is they will use personal data for advertising. Now, this is a new model, but it is a common one, and it is the latest thing we are going to see in browser technology. Come on, just wait for Firefox to start cramming this crap down our throat. Of course, everybody is putting in LLM search models crammed into their browsers. Makes me want to go and delete every browser from the internet. I don't know. But fortunately, you can turn most of those off, or you actually have to actively turn them on in many cases. Now, what they're doing here, though, is OpenAI is looking at wanting to buy Chrome if indeed the antitrust lawsuit against Google forces them to sell it off. Of course, Perplexity also said they would be highly interested in buying Google Chrome. So what OpenAI's model is, from the interview with his with their employee here, and we covered this one on our weekly news roundup. We're not going to go into it in a lot more detail here, but everything in this article talks about making Google Chrome an AI agentic system. There's nothing in here about OpenAI collecting more data from the user. So I don't know exactly if they have goals to do that as well, or if this person is specifically just interested in the agentic AI model. But what OpenAI's interest in Google Chrome is that it is the largest web browser market share by far. And if they buy it and start cramming their AI models into it, then it will greatly bolster their product position in the market. Not to mention that OpenAI is affiliated with Microsoft and also owns Edge. So not OpenAI, Microsoft owns Edge. Microsoft has a partnership with OpenAI. So now the status of Chromium, of course, is kind of still in limbo. It's not fully owned by Google, but there's a whole consortium that manages it, including guys like Microsoft and things. But Chrome itself, that code base for that, could stay with the same basic influence group as Edge does. That's a very interesting place. What if those just kind of merge together? OpenAI browser, and now we are back to the late 90s, early 2000s antitrust case with Microsoft. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff going on. This is a common thing. OpenAI and Perplexity would both be interested in Chrome, and in this case, it's about agentic AI in both of their particular instances. Now, with that being said, what are some of the solutions we have here? Obviously, number one, don't use Comet when it comes out. Just like look at it, oh, that agentic AI browser, which is there specifically to build better user profiles on us. Wonderful. Let's not use that. Okay. Obviously, be aware of that, but also be aware of any browser connected to any advertising company. This is why you should not be using Google Chrome either, nor should you use Microsoft Edge. All of these browsers are tied with companies which are seeking to make a lot of money on building better user profiles. We cannot trust what those closed source browsers are doing. So you should not be using any of those. I still personally use Firefox, although I have hardened it for all of the nonsense Firefox is doing with it. I also, though, use a cornucopia of other browsers, including LibreWolf, Malvad browser. I use Chromium, Vivaldi, and I do have a plan to install Zen browser on one of my systems. That is a new and up-and-coming browser, which is allegedly for privacy. I want to look into that that one a little bit more closer before making an official recommendation. Just know it is on my radar. So you should also install a extension like Privacy Badger to block ad trackers. So Google, TikTok, and Facebook are the three big ad profiles that track you around the internet. And even if you're not using any of those applications, I certainly don't use TikTok or Facebook at all, but I have them blocked on my server, and I use the Privacy Browser extension, which will block all of the known advertising data trackers that are out there. So in other words, you should be using something like Privacy Browser. If you have the technical skill or you want to set up a pie hole or something, you should block all of those additionally on your whole network. It prevents any device from feeding information back to a Facebook, TikTok, Google data analytics tracker, and I guarantee there's going to be more trackers like this built into a proprietary browser like Comet, so you have to be aware of that. Anything you can do to block data being sent to third parties is a good thing. So use browsers that resist such data collection, as I had mentioned. So in conclusion here, take control of data trackers, prevent them from accessing any of your data. Do not allow yourself to have a profile built with a big company. All they're trying to do is target you with more ads. Just look at what LG TVs are doing. We covered that again in the weekly news roundup. They're trying to utilize not something that's based on demographic targeting. They're trying to base things based on emotional and psychological tracking. That's just downright evil, in my opinion. I don't know. Let me know what you think. But you should avoid browsers tied to analytical companies. You should be focusing specifically on more of the open source side of things, and stop using platforms which are seeking to build better profiles or to make revenue by targeting you specifically with ads, demographic or psychological. There's our thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.